150 volunteers to run a fundraising event. Is that realistic? Is it insane? Let's talk about it.
Hi, we are Ted and Lisa Snyder, and we are nonprofit consultants because we believe a better world needs healthier nonprofits. Now, I'm excited. We found this great Reddit post, and it's someone asking, I'm being told I need 150 volunteers to run this fundraising event. Is this realistic? Is this insane? Let's just jump into it because it's going to be interesting.
All right, so I'm just going to read a little bit and then we'll just chat.
Yep.
So the nonprofit I work for is smallish, about 15 people. I'm guessing that's what they mean staff. And they've asked me to find 150 volunteers for a major fundraising event. And I just want some reassurance that this isn't unreasonable, but I'm worried. It's difficult to get volunteers to commit to anything more than a month in advance.
So we did jump ahead on this one just a little bit because 150 volunteers isn't realistic. Now, if this nonprofit had never used volunteers before, I'd be like,
that might be tough.
Probably not. But this is a leader who has said that they have had up to 500 volunteers volunteering with them in the past. So we know there's volunteer experience here. So that's fantastic right there. 150 volunteers can feel very daunting, and depending on the size of your organization, it can seem really daunting. What I love about this, though, is this isn't an organization that has like 100 staff member with 150 volunteers. They have 15 people, and they can get in 150 volunteers. They've had up to 500 volunteers. If you are not utilizing volunteers, do you see how much potential there is? Do you see how many people hours that you could get just by incorporating volunteers? Like, I know there's more to talk about with this, but I just want you to know, first and foremost, you can totally do it. It might feel incredibly daunting getting started, but finding volunteers to help your organization, hugely valuable, hugely possible. And that's not the point of this, but I'm excited. So we'll keep going.
So they said it's difficult to get volunteers to commit to anything more than a month in advance. And I would say that hasn't been my experience. It's way harder to get people to commit to stuff in the week of, right? Or 2 weeks in advance. People have fewer plans going forward. If that's why people send out save the dates for weddings. It's like 6 months in advance because they know they don't have anything planned unless it's like a vacation or something. Mm-hmm. So getting volunteers to commit to something in advance is actually not too hard if you have the right pitch and the right vision casting for what is going to be accomplished.
Yeah, it might be a framing issue. Sometimes the last minute stuff can feel like it works a little bit more, and it might be because of the way it's being communicated. I have found last minute, if I hadn't had stuff set up, I might be able to get a few more people if I got on the phone and they could hear it in my voice that things weren't going well. Long term, not a great solution. I will say that this can change generationally too, depending on who your typical volunteers are. People who tend to be a bit more scheduled out and they need more lead time are a little bit different than generations our age and a little bit younger, who as a whole tend to sometimes, I hate the generalizations, but it is a thing, where they're less likely to commit to future plans because they kind of want to see what comes up so that they don't feel like they're missing out on something else that might come up. So depending on who you're working with, this could be the thing. But if you're able to explain the value of the event, the value of what's being done, why the volunteering experience is so important and how much it helps your organization, a lot of times that can be enough to get people to actually start committing. But part of it sometimes is teaching people to prioritize this as a commitment. And that's in how you explain it going into it and how you celebrate it when it's done. Not just the event, but every single volunteer experience. So what we have generally found is if you can work more than a month out, you're not in competition with anything else because people's calendars generally aren't full. And so it is possible, but you do need to have a system set up where you're explaining it well, bringing them in well, and then doing proper follow-up leading up to it. And that includes not texting, hey, are you still in for the event next week? Like not giving people an out, but saying like, hey, thank you for your commitment for this event coming up in a couple of weeks. Here's what you've agreed to and kind of more informing and keeping things going forward. in that regard.
So it says, I've never orchestrated an event with this many people doing different tasks. I have had around 500 volunteers doing one task all in the same place. But these people are going to be running around an entire convention center. And I'm utterly daunted by the idea and feeling sure that getting volunteers who will lead other volunteers may require people who have some serious skills that they probably employ in the workforce. And this is a really, really big tip off for me. This is why this person is feeling scared, because they have done volunteer stuff before that was probably like very low skill volunteer stuff. Maybe they had 500 people stuffing envelopes, for example. We keep going stuffing envelopes, but that's just like the easiest thing I can think of.
And I think it's one every organization could start with. Like,
right.
You know.
Or it's like, oh, we're all going to plant trees, right? Like we have a bunch of seeds and we're going to all go plant trees, right? And it's like relatively easy to do.
Like,
but as
you
soon
can
as you
train that in a very short amount of time. Like, come in, I'll train you in 5 minutes. I'll let you do it. Great, you helped. Like, those are the kind of tasks that have most likely happened for this person thus far.
Right. And so I think the thing that where the breakdown happens is they sort of see themselves as having to be the person who is leading all of these volunteers, even though they're going to all be in a bunch of different places doing different stuff. And that's where it gets like really scary, because they feel like they can't lean on people to use a higher level of skill as a volunteer opportunity. And that's where I want to camp for just a second, because great volunteers and highly skilled volunteers do love to use their skills that maybe they get paid for in the workforce. They love to use them with the nonprofits they care about and are passionate about. So what you want to do is find people that are passionate about what your nonprofit is doing, and then encourage them to use their skills that they are really great at and donate their skills. Donate their ability to lead people in the workforce. Donate their organizational ability. Donate their ability to communicate well, and start finding these team leaders as quickly as possible and inspire them and get them excited about what this event is going to accomplish and how they're going to be able to help in a huge way.
Yeah, a great way to start identifying some of these volunteer leaders is to look at those past events and think through who were the ones who were communicating the most, who were the ones who were helping the other people, who
naturally
who just kind of jumped in, who like maybe saw that someone didn't have everything that they need and they just went and found it and then got the person going again. Whatever that might have looked like. Look at past events to identify who those potential leaders are. And if you have time between now and your next fundraising event, maybe throw in a couple other just volunteer things where you have like a group of 10 or 15 people that come in to help, and see who the natural leaders are. And then also find the people that you naturally just connect with really, really well. They don't have to have like a crazy strong leadership. I can draw everyone around me and inspire all the people. But if you have a volunteer leader who you trust to simply be able to stay organized, stay calm, and execute on your leadership really well, they can oftentimes be great managers for other volunteers. And they might not be someone long-term that you're like, I want you as a key leader on my team for now until forever. But sometimes the people who are great as just those forever people, like they're just great. Every month they can get volunteers in, they can help build the stuff. Those aren't always the best people for the one-time events, because sometimes the one-time events, you need the people who can rally for a night, execute really quickly, and then afterwards they're like, okay, I did my thing, call me when the next event happens. They're just a different wiring, a different type of people. They can both be great at both sometimes, but it's okay to have people who lead for the one event, and finding a way that you can hand them over your level of influence for the evening and they can just execute on what you want.
I was going to say just that, because part of the issue too is like, if I have 150 people and I have to break it down into some leadership, like how are they going to have the trust to follow their leader that they've maybe never met before and follow their instruction and all that stuff? Remember that, leadership is something that is earned through trust and time, but also can be given and can be handed off. And when that happens, when that transfer happens, you're transferring people's trust in you as a leader to this other person that you trust. And when you make that handoff, you can do it in such a way that gets people really excited to work with that leader. Hey, team A is going to be working with Jeff. Jeff is really, really well organized. He actually does this for a living, and I've known him for years. you guys are going to love working with Jeff as you do this team. You 15 people, you're with Jeff. And they're excited to work with Jeff now because
Yeah.
they had their trust in you as the leader who was able to handle these large 500 people volunteer, drives. Now you're handing off some of that trust and experience over to Jeff, and they're instantly trusting him and ready to go.
Yeah. Now, with the 500 people in the same room, chances are that they were doing very similar tasks, would be my guess. I could be wrong. But given that you're going to have people all over the building, just remember that even those tasks are likely simple enough that the average person could do them with very minimal training. And so your goal is to find the leaders who are capable of leading, staying calm, staying organized, and training other people.
Staying calm is huge in a volunteer setting because you want all these volunteers who are showing, this is a big event that you're going to run. This is something that you want people to walk away from. The volunteers walking away from saying, that was the best, most awesome thing I've ever gotten to be a part of. And so if you have leaders that are jerks to people, they're not going to walk away with that experience.
Yeah.
So you want to have people who can remain calm and positive and excited through the whole process and not transfer any kind of like stress or anything down to like the pawn volunteers, for lack of a better, that was terrible. But
Yeah,
the volunteers who are following orders, not giving the orders.
Yeah. And so as you're doing this, just be looking for those people that if you feel like I can hand you a task and I know that's going to get done and I know you're going to be able to stay calm through it. If you set them up correctly and they can basically just duplicate themselves, you'll be surprised at how many volunteer leaders you can find that are just fantastic at what they do. It amazes me in nonprofit work how many highly skilled people are just willing to volunteer their time, and they'll even go to the point where they're willing to schedule, they're willing to invest, they're willing to build the relationships, they're willing to prioritize all these other things on behalf of the nonprofit, and it's astounding to watch. Now, I will say, as you are walking into this, it is a new thing to go from leading volunteers to leading leaders, and it might feel I understand. The first time that I actually handed off leadership to someone, I was like, I don't know how to do this. But I also wasn't confident in how to bring up this person and give them that leadership because Ted is very natural at it. Hey, this is so-and-so. He's great. You're going to like working with him. Here they are. I remember the first time that I felt this need to justify this other person. Here's their experience. Here's their resume. Here's why I think they'll be great. Here's what they're good at. And it doesn't build trust in other people. It just makes them go like, what's wrong with this person that she feels like she has to make up for it. I remember one time I was speaking
Do they smell really bad secretly and they're just trying to cover it up?
I was speaking at an event and the person was trying to figure out how to like introduce me to give me the most credibility. And I finally looked at them and say, just introduce me as this is Lisa. Here's who she is, and give me the microphone. The credibility is that security isn't pulling me off the stage at an event all these people paid for.
They're not tackling me.
Like that's the credibility. The credibility is I'm standing there with a microphone and no one is pulling me off. I don't need other credibility. I have permission to stand there. And that's what we need to recognize when we are giving off leadership is we do not need to justify why we chose the people. We can simply say, you all trust me. I trust them. Let's do this. It's going to be a fantastic event. And then remember, after your event, celebrate. Celebrate your volunteers and celebrate those leaders who came and linked arms with you in order to make it happen. There will be hiccups, especially if this is your first time working with volunteer leaders. Your goal is to stay calm and make sure that everyone knows that at the end of the day, we're doing this together and it's going to be great and we're all going to get it worked out together because people rally in just a special way when it's with volunteers. I've helped out at different volunteer events, one-time things, where it's like things are kind of going a little bit chaotic and suddenly you have volunteers from other teams jumping in going, our stuff is set up. How can I help? How can this help? How can this go? And things just come together and watching, it's like the magic of people who want to see something happen in a really great way. It just is phenomenal to watch. And so as you go into it, be excited about those experiences more than nervous about what could go wrong because people are very, very capable of doing this. And knowing that you've led 500 people, this is the next step is to start bringing in volunteer leaders. And I bet you're capable of doing this too.
Now, just remember too, there are so many benefits to doing this. There are so many benefits to not just hiring
Yeah.
some random crew to come in and do this stuff. The people who do end up coming to be a part of this fundraising event that's at this big convention center where they get to be a part of the action and see what happens behind the scenes and really contribute and sweat and kind of like put some effort into it. These people are going to have a new level of ownership for your organization that they never had before. The people who have a chance to lead in this event, the volunteers who are leading other volunteers, they're going to have a whole new level of ownership and excitement. This is going to bleed over into areas of how much donations are going to be able to be raised in the next year. This is going to bleed over into how many new people hear about the organization, because people are going to say, hey, what'd you do this weekend? You know, if it was just some hired crew and they asked, to be like, oh yeah, I was at the convention center again, right? But if they ask one of your volunteers, what did you do this weekend? They have a different story full of stories and inspiration and excitement about what they did this weekend, and people want to know more about your organization.
Yeah.
So just remember, the power of volunteers isn't just the man hours, and you're not sapping the life out of these people. You're giving them an opportunity to be a part of something that is awesome.
Yes, it's so true. So this is something that, I don't know, I'm excited about this. I really hope that this Reddit poster like doesn't update when the event is done. Here's how it went. Here's what I learned.
That would be really cool.
That would be super cool. But if you're someone who right now is like, okay, they're running 150 volunteers at this event. They've already had 500 volunteers. I'm working and I have 0 volunteers. We actually have a video on how to actually grow your volunteerism within your organization that's on the screen. If that's something that you're seeing that there is real potential here, because think about it. 150 volunteers with leaders, you're probably going to get a few leaders who will stay working within your organization long term if you can set up the structures.
They may be future staff members. They may be future board members.
It's highly, highly, highly valuable. So if you're looking to get started in those first couple steps, you can check out that video and we'll see you over there.